Invisible man. Alexander Reed stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror of his penthouse. The man looking back at him was unrecognizable, and that was precisely the point. His normally well-groomed beard had grown wild, his designer haircut replaced by an unkempt mop. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, not from makeup, but from genuine exhaustion. "Mr. Reed, are you certain about this?" Olivia Chen, his chief of staff, stood in the doorway, concern etched across her face. "More certain than I've been about anything in years," Alex replied, slipping a worn beanie over his head. "The board meeting was the last straw. I built Horizon to create technology that helps people, not to maximize shareholder returns at all costs." 2 months, Olivia reminded him. "That's all I can cover before the quarterly review requires your signature." Alex nodded. Shouldering a weathered backpack containing only essentials, a change of clothes, a prepaid phone, and enough cash to survive without accessing any accounts that could be traced to him. At 42, with a net worth of $7 billion, Alexander Reed was about to disappear. 3 days later, he found himself in Portland, Oregon, far enough from Seattle's tech scene where he might be recognized. The spring rain soaked through his jacket as he wandered downtown, experiencing for the first time how quickly people averted their eyes from a disheveled man. He had become invisible. By evening, hunger drove him into a small corner cafe called Brushstrokes. The warmth inside was a welcome relief from the chill that had settled in his bones. "Take a seat wherever you like," called a voice from behind the counter. "I'll be with you in a moment." Alex slid into a booth in the corner, observing the cafe's unique character. Colorful local artwork adorned the walls, and mismatched vintage furniture created a homey atmosphere. The few other patrons paid him no mind. Sophie Lynn approached his table with a gentle smile that didn't falter when she noticed his appearance. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and paint stains dotted her apron over a simple dress. "Our soup today is tomato basil," she said, placing a menu before him. "And if you need a few minutes to warm up before ordering, that's perfectly fine." Alex noted the absence of judgment in her voice. No pity, no condescension, just simple courtesy. "The soup sounds good," he said quietly. "And maybe some coffee?" Sophie nodded. "Coming right up." She paused. "We have a policy here. First meals on the house for new faces." She said it matter-of-factly, preserving his dignity. When she returned with his order, Alex noticed the small details. She'd brought extra bread, a glass of water with lemon, and coffee in a proper mug rather than a disposable cup. "Thank you," he said, the warmth of the soup already beginning to chase away the chill. "I'm Sophie," she offered. "I own this place, so you'll likely see me whenever you stop by." "James," Alex lied, using his middle name. "I appreciate the welcome." "Everyone deserves good food and a moment's peace," Sophie replied simply before moving to attend to another customer. As Alex ate, he observed Sophie's interactions with other patrons. She knew many by name, asking about family members or commenting on recent events in their lives. With an elderly gentleman who seemed confused about his order, she showed remarkable patience. For the first time in days, Alex felt the tightness in his chest ease slightly. Here, in this small cafe run by a woman who treated everyone with the same genuine kindness, he was just a man having soup. Not a tech mogul, not a commodity, not a target. When he finished eating, he left a $5 bill under his coffee mug, small enough not to raise questions, but something to acknowledge her kindness. "Come back any time," Sophie called as he headed for the door. Outside, the rain had stopped, but Alex lingered in the doorway, suddenly uncertain where to go next. For tonight, he'd find a hostel, but tomorrow he would return to Brushstrokes, not just for the food, but for the fleeting sense of normalcy he'd found there. Small kindnesses. Over the next 2 weeks, James became a regular at Brushstrokes. Each morning, he arrived just after opening, taking the same corner booth where he could observe the cafe's gentle rhythm. Sophie always greeted him with the same warm smile she offered everyone, placing a mug of coffee before him without him having to ask. One rainy Tuesday morning, Sophie approached his table with a concerned expression. "You're soaked through," she said, setting down his coffee. "Wait here." She disappeared into the back room, returning with a faded blue sweater. My brother left this here months ago. He's got plenty. I doubt he even remembers this one exists. Alex hesitated before accepting her offering. I can return it tomorrow. Keep it, Sophie insisted. Portland weather shows no mercy to the unprepared. That afternoon, the cafe was unusually busy. Sophie moved between tables with practiced efficiency, but when a young server called in sick, she found herself overwhelmed. Without thinking, Alex stood up and began clearing empty tables. You don't have to do that, Sophie said when she noticed. I want to, Alex replied. I've got time. After the rush subsided, Sophie slid into the booth across from him, pushing a plate of lemon tart his way. Thank you for the help. Consider this payment. Tell me about this place, Alex said, gesturing to the artwork surrounding them. It's not just a cafe, is it? Sophie's eyes lit up. It started as one, but it's evolving. My grandmother taught art at the community college for 30 years. When she got sick, I took over the cafe to pay for her care. Now I'm trying to honor her legacy by making this a space where local artists can showcase their work. That's why it's called brushstrokes, Alex realized. Sophie nodded. Eventually, I want to convert the unused space upstairs into a small gallery and community studio. A place where anyone can create regardless of means? She laughed softly. Sorry, I don't usually dump my dreams on customers. I'm not just a customer anymore, Alex said. I'm the unofficial busboy. The next day, Alex arrived early and noticed Sophie struggling with a leaking pipe in the bathroom. Without being asked, he rolled up his sleeves and fixed it, drawing on skills from his college days when he'd worked maintenance jobs to pay tuition. Where did you learn to do that? Sophie asked, impressed. Alex shrugged. I've worked a lot of jobs over the years. As days turned to weeks, Alex found himself helping more around the cafe, fixing chairs, painting walls, even helping Sophie design flyers for an upcoming art showcase. Each small task brought a sense of satisfaction he hadn't felt in years at Horizon, where his contributions had become increasingly abstract. One evening after closing, Sophie invited him to stay for dinner. My grandmother is having a good day and she always makes too much food. Join us upstairs? Alex followed her to the apartment above the cafe, where he met Elena Lynn, an elegant woman in her 70s whose hands, though now gnarled with arthritis, still moved with an artist's precision as she served them homemade dumplings. So this is your stray, Elena said with a knowing smile. Grandma, Sophie warned. What? I've heard all about the mysterious handyman who fixes everything but never talks about himself. Elena turned her keen eyes to Alex. Everyone has a story. Some are just harder to tell than others. Later, as Alex helped Sophie with dishes, their hands brushed. The simple contact sent warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the hot water. Your grandmother is remarkable, he said. She sees people, really sees them, Sophie replied. It's why I never turn anyone away from the cafe. She taught me that everyone deserves to be seen. Alex swallowed hard. Even if you don't know the whole story? Sophie's eyes met his, steady and clear. Especially then. That night, as Alex returned to his rented room, his phone buzzed with a message from Olivia. Board meeting moved up. Garrett making moves. How soon can you return? He stared at the screen, the world he'd left behind suddenly intruding on the simpler life he'd been building. For the first time, the thought of returning to Horizon filled him with dread. Not because of the corporate battles awaiting him, but because it would mean leaving the cafe, leaving Sophie. He realized, with startling clarity, that he was falling in love with a woman who didn't even know his real name. Crossing lines. As spring blossomed into early summer, Alex found himself caught between two worlds. Each morning, he checked in with Olivia, receiving increasingly urgent updates about Garrett Walsh's attempt to take control of Horizon Innovations. Each afternoon, he helped Sophie prepare for the grand opening of her community art space, his hands covered in paint instead of signing corporate documents. You're distracted today, Sophie noted as they hung framed photographs along the newly renovated staircase. Everything okay? Alex forced a smile. Just thinking. Dangerous pastime, Sophie teased, nudging his shoulder. The casual touch sent electricity through him. I never asked what brought you to Portland, she continued. You just appeared one rainy day. Alex carefully considered his words. I needed to step away from my life for a while. Things got complicated. Complicated how? I built something that started to feel like it wasn't mine anymore, he said, the closest to truth he'd allowed himself. Sophie nodded thoughtfully. I understand that feeling. After my parents died, the cafe became my responsibility overnight. For years, I resented it. This thing that kept me tied down while my friends traveled and built careers. But eventually, I realized I could reshape it into something meaningful. That evening, Sophie closed the cafe early. Come on, she said, tossing Alex his jacket. There's somewhere I want to show you. She drove them to a bluff overlooking the city, where the setting sun painted Portland's skyline in hues of gold and amber. They sat on the hood of her ancient Volvo, sharing a thermos of coffee and a box of pastries. I come here when decisions feel too big, Sophie explained. It helps to see the whole picture. Alex looked at her profile, illuminated by the fading light. What decision are you facing now? Sophie turned to him, her expression suddenly vulnerable. Whether to trust what I'm feeling. For you. The air between them charged with possibility. Alex leaned forward, his hand gently cupping her cheek as their lips met in a tentative kiss that quickly deepened with unexpected intensity. Sophie's fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer as the city lights began twinkling below them. When they finally parted, breathless, Sophie smiled. I've wanted to do that for weeks. Me too, Alex admitted, though guilt twisted in his stomach. Every day he didn't tell her the truth made the eventual revelation more dangerous. That night, they returned to Sophie's apartment above the cafe. Elena had gone to bed, leaving them alone in the small living room where watercolors and sketches covered the walls. Their second kiss led to a third, bodies moving together with increasing urgency until Sophie took his hand and led him to her bedroom. In the soft lamplight, they explored each other with tender curiosity. Alex traced the constellation of freckles across Sophie's shoulders, memorizing each one as if solving an essential puzzle. She ran her hands along the unexpected muscles of his arms, evidence of his recent physical labor at the cafe. You're full of surprises, she whispered against his skin. Their lovemaking was unhurried, each touch a revelation. Afterward, as Sophie slept curled against him, Alex stared at the ceiling, conflict raging within him. His phone vibrated silently on the nightstand with another message from Olivia. Critical situation. Call immediately. The next morning, Alex slipped out early, promising to return for the afternoon shift. Instead, he found a secluded spot in a nearby park to call Olivia. Garrett's moved up the shareholder vote, she reported. He's claiming your absence proves instability. We need you back in Seattle by tomorrow to prevent the takeover. I can't just disappear, Alex protested, thinking of Sophie. You disappeared 2 months ago, Olivia reminded him. The difference is, this time you'd be saying goodbye first. As Alex returned to the cafe, he saw Sophie through the window, laughing with Elena as they arranged flowers for the art space opening. The sight made his heart constrict. How could he explain that James the handyman was actually Alexander Reed, a man whose face had appeared on the cover of Forbes? Before he could enter, his phone buzzed with breaking news. Horizon CEO Alexander Reed spotted in Portland after 2-month disappearance. His time had run out. Shattered glass. Sophie's hands trembled as she stared at her phone screen. The headline blaring in bold letters, Tech billionaire Alexander Reed ends mysterious absence, spotted in Portland cafe. Below it, a blurry photo showed a bearded man helping a dark-haired woman hang a painting. Despite the poor quality, Sophie recognized herself and James immediately. Grandma, she called, her voice cracking. Did you see this? Elena shuffled into the room, adjusting her reading glasses to look at the screen. Her eyes widened. Well, she said finally, that explains a few things. The bell above the cafe door jingled, and Sophie looked up to see Alex standing there, freshly showered and wearing clothes she'd never seen before. A crisp, button-down shirt and tailored pants that fit him perfectly. Gone was the scruffy beard, replaced by neat stubble that accentuated his jawline. He looked like a stranger. "Sophie," he began, moving toward her. "Alexander Reed," she replied, her voice ice cold. "CEO of Horizon Innovations. Net worth $7 billion, according to this article." She held up her phone like evidence in a trial. "Quite a step down from your usual establishments, I imagine. Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you pretended to be homeless. How you let me give you charity. How you fixed my leaking pipes when you could have bought the entire building." Each question raised in volume until she was nearly shouting. Was this some kind of social experiment? Or just an entertaining way to slum it with the common folk? Elena touched her granddaughter's arm. "Sophie, perhaps we should hear him out." "No," Sophie said firmly. "I don't need to hear how the billionaire needed a vacation from his privileged life and decided to play dress-up in mine." She moved to the door and held it open. "Please leave." "Sophie, everything between us was real," Alex insisted, not moving. "Nothing was real," she shot back. "I don't even know your real name." "You do know me," he said quietly. "Better than anyone has in years." Sophie shook her head, tears threatening. "The man I knew didn't exist. He was just a disguise you put on and can take off whenever it's convenient." A sleek black car pulled up outside the cafe, and a woman in an impeccable suit stepped out, her expression urgent. "Mr. Reed, we need to leave now. The board meeting starts in 3 hours." Sophie laughed bitterly. "Your real life is calling, Mr. Reed." Alex reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I'm coming back," he promised. "After I deal with this situation at Horizon, we'll talk." "Don't bother," Sophie replied. "We have nothing to say to each other." After he left, Sophie closed the cafe early and cried in Elena's arms, feeling foolish and betrayed. The art space opening, scheduled for the following weekend, now felt tainted by his involvement. Worse, local news vans had begun to park outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of Alexander Reed's Portland waitress. "I fell in love with a lie," Sophie whispered. Elena stroked her hair. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you saw the man beneath all his masks, both the wealthy CEO and the pretend handyman." Over the next few days, Sophie threw herself into preparations for the opening, determined not to let Alexander Reed's deception ruin what she'd worked so hard to build. But each repair he'd made, each wall he'd painted reminded her of their time together. On Thursday, a courier delivered a large envelope addressed to Sophie. Inside was a handwritten letter and documents showing that Alexander Reed had anonymously donated funds to establish an art scholarship at Portland Community College in Elena Lynn's name. "He did this 3 weeks ago," Elena noted, examining the paperwork. "Before he was discovered." Sophie crumpled the letter without reading it. "Another grand gesture from a man who has more money than he knows what to do with. Or a genuine tribute from someone who saw how much teaching meant to me," Elena countered gently. The night before the opening, Sophie stayed late at the cafe, rearranging artwork to fill spaces where Alex's contributions had been removed. The door opened despite the closed sign, and she looked up, expecting to see another reporter. Instead, a tall man in a business suit entered, his expression cold. "Miss Lynn? I'm Garrett Walsh, Alexander's business partner." "The cafe is closed," Sophie said firmly. "I'm not here for coffee," Walsh replied with a thin smile. "I'm here to make you an offer." Alex has been making questionable decisions lately. His board is concerned about his stability. Your story, if told the right way, could help convince shareholders that Alexander Reed is not fit to lead Horizon. Sophie's eyes narrowed. "You want me to publicly humiliate him?" "I want you to tell your truth," Walsh corrected smoothly. "In return, Horizon would make a substantial donation to your little project here." He gestured dismissively around the cafe. "Say $500,000? Sophie stepped closer to him, anger replacing her earlier sorrow. "Get out." $1 million, Walsh countered. "Think of what you could do with—" "I said get out," Sophie repeated, louder this time. "I may have been deceived by Alexander Reed, but at least now I understand why he needed to escape people like you." Foundations, the community art space opening was a success despite, or perhaps because of, the media attention. Local artists displayed their work alongside pieces from Elena's personal collection, and the upstairs studio buzzed with children trying watercolors for the first time. Sophie moved through the crowd with practiced ease, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "You've created something special here," said a woman who had been quietly observing from a corner. She extended her hand. "I'm Olivia Chen. I work with Alex." Sophie tensed. "Is this another attempt to fix things?" "Because you can tell your boss." "Actually," Olivia interrupted, "Alex doesn't know I'm here. And he's not my boss anymore, at least temporarily." Sophie frowned. "What do you mean?" "He stepped down as CEO yesterday," Olivia explained. "He appointed an interim leadership team and transferred controlling shares to a trust with strict ethical guidelines about how Horizon's technology should be developed." "Why would he do that?" Sophie asked, genuinely confused. "You'd have to ask him," Olivia replied. "But between us, I think he's trying to rebuild something from the ground up." He mentioned foundations. After Olivia left, Sophie found herself distracted, her thoughts returning to Alex and their final conversation. When the event ended and the last guests departed, she sat alone on the staircase connecting the cafe to the art space, remembering how they had painted these walls together. A knock at the door startled her. Through the glass, she saw Alex standing in the rain, no umbrella, no fancy car waiting nearby. Sophie hesitated before unlocking the door. "We're closed." "I know," Alex said, making no move to enter. "I just wanted to see how the opening went." "It looks beautiful. Why did you step down from Horizon?" Sophie asked directly. Alex looked surprised. "How did you—" Olivia stopped by. He nodded, understanding. "I built Horizon to create technology that improves people's lives. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that mission. The company became about growth, about stock prices, about my own ego." He paused. "Working here at Brushstrokes, I remembered what it feels like to build something real, something that directly helps people." "So what now?" Sophie asked. "Now I rebuild. Both Horizon and—" He hesitated. "Whatever else might be salvageable." They stood in silence, the distance between them filled with unspoken words. "I met your friend Garrett," Sophie finally said. "He offered me money to help discredit you." Alex winced. "I'm sorry you were dragged into corporate politics." "I'm not," Sophie surprised herself by saying. "It helped me understand what you were running from." She stepped aside, a silent invitation to enter. Inside, they sat at Sophie's favorite table by the window, rain streaming down the glass outside. "I was so angry," Sophie admitted. "Not just because you lied about your name or your wealth, but because I thought everything between us was a game to you." "It wasn't," Alex insisted. "When I came to Portland, I was just looking for an escape. I never expected to find home." The simple word hung between them, heavy with meaning. "I don't know if I can trust you," Sophie said honestly. "I know," Alex acknowledged. "Trust has to be rebuilt, like foundations after an earthquake." Elena appeared from the back room, carrying 3 cups of tea. "I thought I heard voices," she said, setting the tray down and joining them without invitation. "Grandma, we're having a private conversation," Sophie protested. "Good. I've been waiting for you two to have one." Elena turned to Alex. "My granddaughter is stubborn and proud, like her mother, and you, young man, have made serious mistakes. But in my 76 years, I've learned that the people worth keeping in your life are those who see you clearly, both your light and your shadows, and choose to stay anyway." After Elena retreated, Sophie and Alex sat in silence, her grandmother's words settling between them. "I'd like to start over," Alex finally said. "Not as James, not as Alexander Reed, CEO, just as Alex. The man who fell in love with you while fixing your leaking pipes and painting your walls." Sophie studied him, seeing beyond both disguises, the homeless handyman and the polished billionaire, to the person underneath who had helped her build her dream, who had listened to her stories, who had seen her. "I don't want to start over," she said finally. "I want to continue from where we are now, with honesty." "No more walls between us!" Alex reached across the table, his hand open in invitation. After a moment's hesitation, Sophie placed her hand in his. "I can't promise it will be easy," she warned. "The things worth building rarely are," Alex replied. Outside, the rain had stopped and the first light of dawn illuminated Portland's skyline. Inside Brushstrokes Cafe, two people began the patient work of building something true, one honest conversation at a time.